What's good, everybody? What's good? Happy Friday night. You know what time it is. It is once again time for another episode of Mystery Unsolved. Tonight's episode, another gruesome, perhaps, most likely gruesome episode topic at hand. So, with that being said, viewer discretion is advised. Tonight on Mystery Unsolved, the shark arm case. Have you heard of that one? YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Have you heard? The case takes place in 1935. We're starting from the low end of the 1900s, working our way up. That's what we're doing this season. Without further ado, Mystery Unsolved, the shark arm case. It was a balmy spring afternoon on April 17th, 1935. Bert Hobson and his son Ron were fishing from a 12-foot launch off Mararobra Point in Coogee, Sydney, Australia. Dissatisfied with their catch so far, they put out set lines, baited with a horse mackerel before returning home for the evening. The following morning, they returned to see that their lines had caught anything profitable. They were surprised to discover a tiger shark measuring a mighty 14 feet 6 inches. Now, I don't fish. I've never fished in my entire existence of life. But even I know that's a big ass catch. The shark had been lured to the set line to feast on a smaller shark that had become tangled in it. They captured the shark and then sold it to the Coogee Aquarium, which happened to be run by Bert's brother Charlie. The worldwide economic depression of the 1930s had hit Sydney hard, and Charlie Hobson hoped that this exciting addition would attract visitors willing to pay a bit extra to see the impressive shark fed twice a day. So imagine, like, I don't know if these people I don't know if they fished for sport, if they fished to find stuff like this for him to give to his brother, or they fished for food because naturally I assume that's what one would do when they go fishing. I don't know why I did that. but but yeah, so I'm gonna say the third thing on the list was I'm gonna give my brother who owns an aquarium whatever I catch. Probably didn't expect that. But here we are. On the afternoon of April 25th, Anzac Day, a holiday honoring World War I veterans. I didn't know that. 8 days after the shark had been caught, a grisly discovery surfaced in the shark's tank. Fortunately, only a few people were present when when the aquarium's prize attraction started to thrash about, almost as if it was about to jump out of the pool. Moments later, a human arm, clearly expelled by the shark, was spotted bobbing in the water. While Bert Hobson used a stick to keep this gruesome ah, While Bert Hobson used a stick to keep this gruesome find too close to the side of the sorry. While Bert Hobson used a stick to keep this gruesome find close to the side of the tank, in case the huge shark tried to swallow it again, the police were immediately informed and rushed to the scene. Yeah, so they saw a human arm, floating in the tank. The shark just upchucked it. To their surprise, the arm appeared to be a fair state of preservation. Generally, the gastric juices of a shark would digest human flesh within days. However, the stress and shock of being captured and put on display may have slowed the shark's digestive processes. A piece of rope was tied around the wrist. On the inside forearm was a tattoo of two sparring boxers. It was thought that the arm had actually been swallowed by a smaller shark that the tiger shark had eaten. Process that. The tiger shark didn't swallow the arm. The tiger shark swallowed another smaller shark, and the smaller shark swallowed the arm. Yeah, it's like that. Gradually, theories as to whose arm it was started to build. Some wondered that the arm had been discarded by a doctor or medical student, while others suggested rather fan, fan I don't even know what I've never heard of this word before. Fancifully? Fancifully, that the arm could have belonged to a man who had died by suicide by plunging into the ocean with his arms tied. Did the police assume that? Do we have stupid 30s police again? Yeah, he must have killed himself. It doesn't say the police, but I have to assume it was, because 30s police officers are the only idiots that come up with the conclusion of he probably killed himself. He was set on fire. Yeah, he probably killed himself. This guy, yeah, he jumped into the ocean with his arms tied. Wanted to off himself. Who does that? Due to decomposition, fingerprinting was no easy task. Medical examiners had to carefully remove skin from the fingers and then slip it over their own gloved digits to lift a print. Police received their first lead when a man named Edwin Smith recognized the description of the tattoo. Edwin's brother James had been missing since April 7th, over 3 weeks, after telling his wife that he was going on a fishing trip with a companion. James was a 45-year-old English-born criminal, police informant, and ex-boxer who lived in the Sydney suburb of Gladsville. That guy has a resume, huh? English-born criminal, police informant, and ex-boxer. You can just picture him, right? Like, can't you just get like a? Did you just get like a sudden description of this man? Like, I didn't even tell you what he looked like, but like you can just picture like the type. Fingerprinting confirmed that the arm did indeed belong to him. Ah, so we know whose arm it was. It was Edwin Smith's. No, excuse me, James Smith's. It was initially assumed that this discovery was simply evidence of another tragic shark attack, of which there had been 3 in recent months. However, further examination revealed a far more disturbing scenario. It was clear that the arm had not been bitten off by the shark after all. It had been severed with a knife. The focus of the investigation suddenly shifted to murder. So they see a shark upchuck an arm. Naturally, they're like, oh, that shark bit off that fucking arm. Excuse me. That's what naturally you would assume. But no. Somebody cut off the arm with a knife and then threw it into the ocean. And then a shark just swimming by was just like, food. Thanks to Edwin's information, the police at least knew whom the arm belonged to. However, they were now faced with the arguably most bizarre case they had ever encountered. On June 15, 1935, detectives freely admitted that they were facing a problem seemingly devised by one of the cleverest killers in the history of Sydney's crime. James Smith had numerous connections with the criminal underworld, and while looking into his seedy acquaintances, investigators came across the name Reginald Holmes. Too many who knew him. Holmes appeared to be a respectable, wealthy businessman and family man who ran a successful boat-building business on the shores of Lavender Bay. However, there was another hidden side to Holmes's life. Behind the facade of normality, he was involved in various illegal activities, controlling lucrative smuggling and insurance fraud operations from his company, which was strategically situated on the shorefront. Inquiries revealed that Holmes had once hired Smith to collect cocaine, opium, and other contraband dropped overboard by ships coming in from the east. They also discovered that a year before his disappearance, Smith had been using an overinsured yacht owned by Holmes when it mysteriously caught fire and sank. The duo had intended to cash in the insurance money, but the company concerned became suspicious and refused to pay. So I read this book. I do remember this, and if I remember correctly, it takes a really bizarre turn with Reginald Holmes. As if this case couldn't get any more bizarre, I think it does. Investigators speculate that Smith was shot dead on the shore and his body then dumped into the ocean. They hope that finding the spent cartridge from the bullet that killed him, as well as identifying the gun that fired it, might lead them to his killer. The beaches from Cronulla to Coogee were painstakingly searched. The shark in the aquarium was also killed, gutted, and examined. Jesus! That poor shark! I'm sorry, I feel bad for the shark. They're like, first this guy catches the shark, gives it to his brother who owns an aquarium, so that they can make money off of people coming to see this shark. But then the shark coughs up an arm, and they're like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's gut that shark. Let's kill him. Let's gut him. Let's see what else he has in him. The poor shark, right? God damn. However, both of these attempts to find any clues as to how Smith met his end were in vain. So they pretty much killed the shark for nothing. Right? Killed him for nothing. Initially, Holmes strongly denied any involvement in the bizarre case, but shortly after police questioned him, they received reports of a raving man careening around the harbor in a speedboat with blood streaming down his face. Yeah, this is what I know I told you it was about to get even more bizarre. Yeah. After a lengthy police pursuit, the dazed man was captured and identified as Reginald Holmes. So remember, this is the guy who appeared to be respectable, wealthy businessman and family man, and he had a successful boat building business. But also he was a corrupt criminal, and he had James Smith smuggle opium, cocaine, and other contraband. So I'm picturing this suave gentleman, but on the side he's like, do your worst. Don't come back until you have everything. He had a wound on his head, and he claimed that somebody had shot at him. However, the police were skeptical of his story and concluded that Holmes had inflicted the gunshot wound on himself. Either Holmes was trying to catch himself as a victim in the case, or the graze on his head was a failed suicide attempt. Okay, yes, it was a suicide attempt, but I feel like, how do I explain this? Like, he's kind of showing that he's crazy. So him wanting to kill himself I don't know. I'll just keep reading. Interrogation of Holmes led investigators to a convicted forger named Patrick Brady, with whom Smith had been drinking and playing cards at the Hotel Cecil in Cronulla. Not to be confused with the Hotel Cecil in the United States. The police found out that, this unraveled. Like, try to follow this if you can. It's a whole thing. The police found out that Brady employed several aliases, including Mr. Williams, Mr. Anderson, and Mr. Evans, and had rented a cottage called Cord Joy on Toowoomba Street in Cronulla. This is Patrick Brady now. When the cottage was searched, a can of kerosene mixed with blood was found in the pantry. The owner of the cottage noticed that since Brady had rented it, 2 rugs, 2 large mats, a mattress, a metal trunk, and rope all appeared to be missing. Even more peculiar, the contents of the missing metal trunk had been placed inside a new, larger one that was found in its place. The owner also noted that the cottage had been scrumptiously cleaned. Impressed by the accumulation of clues, the police questioned Patrick Brady and a few days later charged him with the murder of James Smith. So, case closed, right? Right? No. Are you starting to understand why I wanted to do this case? It's about to open up even more. It's about to get even more batshit crazy. Reginald Holmes was scheduled to appear at the coroner's inquiry, as well as the much anticipated trial of Brady. However, Holmes would not live long enough to give his testimony. In the early hours of the very morning of the coroner's inquiry, Holmes was found shot dead in his car on Hickson Road, Dawes Point, near Sydney Harbor Bridge. This desolate, rundown area was somewhat that law-abiding citizens tended to avoid. It was reputed to be a favorite meeting point for local smugglers, a place where money and contraband speedily changed hands. The passenger door of Holmes's Nash sedan was ajar, and the position of his wounds indicated that he had been shot 3 times by someone sitting in the passenger seat. So remember, this was a frequent meetup of people who dealt with contraband and stuff, and Reginald Holmes probably knew about it because he dealt with contraband. And this time, we know he didn't try to kill himself. He was clearly shot 3 times by the passenger. Moreover, there was no signs of a struggle, implying that Holmes had been murdered by somebody he knew well enough to allow into his car. I always love how they can figure that out. Just the way the body's positioned. He knew his killer. How can you determine that? Well, the way his body is. What? Holmes had been... Wait. A man fishing off Dawes Point claimed to have heard 3 shots at around 9 o'clock or 10 p.m. Well, which is it? Is it 9 or is it 10? Following Holmes's murder, his wife came forward. He was married. They didn't... I'm like 3 pages in, 2 pages in on Reginald Holmes, and they're just now saying that he was married. His wife came forward to divulge what she knew, and in lieu of her murdered husband, became the key witness in the trial. She said that on April 8th, Patrick Brady, here's Patrick Brady again, had visited their home. His arms were cut and bloody, and he carried a knapsack that she recognized as belonging to Smith. A taxi driver would later corroborate her story, telling investigators that on the same day he had driven Brady from Cronulla to Holmes's home in North Sydney. After Brady left, Holmes had told his wife that Brady had murdered... After Brady left, Holmes told his wife that Brady had murdered Smith, dismembered him, and put him in a tin trunk, put him in a boat, and tipped it overboard. God damn. How elaborate is that, huh? Put him in a trunk, then put him in the boat, and then tip over the boat. A majority of detectives in Sydney Homicide Squad believed that Brady somehow forgot about Smith's telltale tattoo arm when packing the trunk with the rest of his dismembered remains. Realizing his mistake, he later disposed of it, whereupon it was swallowed by the shark. So that's how the shark ended up swallowing the arm. That's how we got this. It's come full circle. Others theorized that Brady had retained Smith's arm as evidence in order to convince Holmes that the gruesome deed had been done before disposing of it in the sea. Oh, there's an arm. Oh, there's an arm. Oh, there's an arm in the bottom of the sea. The Supreme Court ruled that an arm did not constitute a body, which was required for a murder conviction, and thus there was no way of knowing if James Smith was deceased or not. Can you imagine? Like, oh, we only have this arm, you know? This is all we have is an arm. For all we know, he could still be out there with one arm. We don't know. But does he turn up? Let's find out at the conclusion of this. The judge also refused to accept Mrs. Holmes' testimony regarding it as only hearsay. I buy that. Because, of course, naturally, she's going to, stick up for her husband. The generally accepted theory is that when the insurance company refused to pay out after the suspicions of sinking... The generally accepted theory is that when the insurance company refused to pay out after the suspicious sinking of Holmes's yacht, Smith and Holmes fell out, and Smith threatened to expose Holmes as a criminal. which he was, James Smith's wife, Jesus, testified that she found an entry to her husband's black pocketbook that Reginald Holmes had owned him 60 65 60 or $65, the equivalent of $5,025 or $5,498 today. I never understand how that translates, but okay, whatever. She said that it could not she said she could not be sure how the debt was incurred. However, it is possible that this amount Holmes owed Smith for the boat insurance scheme that went away. In a bid to save his reputation, Holmes hired Brady to put Smith away for good, and Brady shot Smith dead in his rented cottage. When investigators later questioned Holmes, Brady believed that Holmes would not stand up to the pressure, so he silenced him. An intriguing alternative theory about Holmes's death was put forward by Alex Castles in his 1995 book, 35, 45, 55, 65, 75, 85, 95. That's 70 years later. 70 years after the case. In Alex Castle's 1995 book, The Shark Arm Murders, Castle speculated that outwardly respectable Holmes could have taken out a contract on his own life in order to spare his family the public shame they would have if he were to be convicted of the boat insurance fraud. Castle also suggested another possible suspect of the murders of Smith and Holmes. Smith had been a police informant and pointed the finger at a Sydney gangster named Eddie Wayman in a bank robbery. Wayman was also mixed up in the local drug trade, and it's possible that Wayman killed Smith and Holmes out of revenge to remove rivals in the drug trade. I don't like that one because, this is just randomly picking up a dude that you somehow found out that one of them knew, and he was a gangster, he was a bad dude. But you literally pulled him out of thin air. There had never been any mention of this Eddie Wayman up until now. I respect the author for doing his research, but that seems very far-fetched. I'll just come right out and say that right now. The person who threw James Smith's dismembered arm to the sharks and silenced Reginald Holmes has never been brought to justice. In 1954, somebody tried to kill James Smith's son, Raymond, with a car bomb. Fortunately, no one was in the car when the bomb exploded. In the past, murder convictions without a body were rare, but modern developments in forensic science have made it much more likely that a conviction can be obtained today. A famous example in the conviction of Richard Crafts, who murdered his wife in Connecticut in 1986 and disposed of her body using a wood chipper. Dear Lord. What movie does that happen in? I think The Stepfather 3. They end up throwing him into the wood chipper. Yeah, this poor woman was put into a wood chipper. DNA technology and criminal investigation would probably have resulted in Brady being found guilty, with or without the rest of Smith's body. The notoriety of the shark arm case blighted Patrick Brady's life. He died in 1965, age 71. Whoever killed James Smith, it was 1,000,000 to 1 chance that the murder was ever brought to light, triggering a chain of events stranger than the plots of most thriller fiction. So yeah, as you can see, that was a batshit crazy case. Hence the reason I wanted to do it. I mean, it's called the shark arm case. Naturally, you're going to want to check it out, right? All right. Theories, I'll keep it short and sweet. Not because I want to, but because that's how it is. Patrick Brady and Reginald Holmes. They didn't find the body, but obviously I think James Smith was dead. Excuse me. I think that Reginald Holmes hired Patrick Brady to kill him. Patrick Brady and Reginald Holmes, maybe they had an issue. Maybe Patrick Brady wanted more money. Maybe they had a falling out because he owed him money. And Brady ended up not only killing James Smith and throwing his dismembered arm into the ocean or the sea, and a shark ended up swallowing it, and then another shark swallowed that shark. I love that part. And then, as if killing James Smith wasn't enough, they had a falling out, or he wanted more money, or he owed him money, and Patrick Brady killed Reginald Holmes. Seems simple enough, right? Why can't they all be like that? Because they wouldn't be unsolved mysteries if they were. So yeah, that's my theory. I do hope you enjoyed this case of Mystery Unsolved, the shark arm case. I do love these cases in this book, Unsolved Murders, because they give you a lot of, like I said last week, they give you a lot of details. But the one problem is they give you so much details that you're like sifting through and you try to figure out what's good, what's real, and what's total bullshit, because they can't be both. Like, I think the whole Eddie Wayman thing, I think that's bullshit. Again, I appreciate that author for like finding it, but it's like you picked it out of thin air. Do stay tuned for next week's episode where I'm going to try to figure out what it is. I can't, unfortunately, I should have it ready to go, but I'm so unprofessional as usual. But I will look into it. Again, I do hope you enjoyed the shark arm case tonight. And do stay tuned next week, where once again, viewer discretion will be advised because we are going to Ohio for the Cleveland Torso Murders. Viewer discretion will, in fact, be advised for a third straight week. For Mystery Unsolved, this is Justin Bienvenu. Have a good one.